Hi, Michael. Thank
Hey, what's
you
up, Abbie?
for coming on Coaches in Real Life. It's actually been a while since I recorded one of these, but we've just been chatting. I'm excited to get to know you a little more, a little deeper. You've actually been part of the Coaches Circle that I've been hosting recently, which has been really cool. But yeah, as a one-on-one conversation, it will be interesting just to hear about more about your journey and what has brought you to coaching. Um, so yeah, I just dive straight in deep with is there any sort of backstory, kind of like growing up, pivotal life moments that you wanna start and share that tell us a bit more about who you are and what's brought you on this path, like early days or wherever you want to start.
Well, first, I want to thank you very much for the Coaches Circle. I really appreciate creating the opportunity to have a group of coaches speaking to each other. It's nice to have that community and to have that network, especially in this kind of field where we help other people. It becomes a little difficult, and you kind of feel like you're very alone in the process. So when you put that out there, it was very welcoming to know that there was going to be a landing space of like-minded individuals that are also out in the field trying to do the work. So I wanted to first make sure I said that. Said thank you for that.
Thank you for joining it. It's been it's been super interesting space to just open and navigate, and we're early days, but it's definitely attracting a real inclusive, welcoming vibe, like you say, where we can just bring anything, and it's not just the highlights or the good stuff, but the struggles, and not feeling like we're, like you say, like so alone on the journey. So thank you for coming into that as well.
Of course, anyone that's watching this, if you're a coach, you should join, right? You should definitely join. Please don't. It's very easy to throw up the white flag when you're by yourself. But the second that you're involved with somebody else and you're involved with a group of other people that are also out there churning away, helping people, doing the work, it
Mm.
becomes, you feel a little bit more support and a little bit more strength during that process. So yeah, so you asked about kind of like a backstory. So when I was around 6 or 7, my parents and I we were going to go to a theater.
Mm.
So we're walking down the street. We're headed to the theater. I'm in the middle, I'm holding their hands. It's very little. And a robber approached us, kind of like from this dark alley. And I remember my dad kind of stood up and was just like, hey, listen, he was very wealthy. He stood up, he's like, listen, everything's fine. Just take our stuff, whatever. And this individual just wasn't having it, and you know, uh, robbed me and my father and my mom, and they were both, taken from me during that experience. Um, Actually, I was Batman. That was. You ever seen Batman? Remember?
I'm not. I mean,
You like that?
I'm not the biggest superhero thing, but yeah, I got you. I
Oh,
got you.
I'm sorry. That's not mine. That's Bruce Wayne's. That's Bruce Wayne's backstory. No, I was not. Anyway, uh,
You had me really drawn there.
you like that, right? You like that. You like that. So, no, I was a fortunate kid. I grew up. Parents who did pretty well. Dad went to Duke University, which is a very good university in the States. Mother college educated as well. And I think, there was the trauma for me, was this, growing up and being kind of like one of the only. As I grew up, it was just me as far as being this like black kid in this very white environment, right? And I'm like, I know you can't tell, but I'm actually 50. No,
Right.
Abbie, please. I know. Like, right? I'll give a
Never.
moment. Let me give a moment for the audience to be like, oh my God, there's no way. How can this man be? Okay. Okay. Anyway, he's not 29. I thought he was. He looks like he's okay. So in that environment, there was this consistent, when you're different than other people around you, right? There's this way that our thoughts create less than. So there were certain things that I attached myself to, certain thoughts that were really problematic that were learned from a young age. And gradually throughout life, once I adapted this process of less than, I saw that it was very easy to apply that belief to other situations, right? And so it's almost like as I started seeing different situations, it was a kind of like a cognitive bias where I would take that and apply it to anything. If I didn't do well on a test, oh, well, that's because I'm different. That's because I'm less than. That's because I'm not good enough. Right. And it didn't matter if I had evidence to the contrary. It didn't matter because I had already believed it. I adopted that principle. And so that really was major in my life for a very long time. And we always learn something, right? One of the things I share a lot, and I think would help me, was the quote from Joe Dispenza: at the end of every experience is an emotion, right? And so emotions are like email. Emotions arrive on the scene, they bring with them information. And when you have that, what you do with that information and how you filter that information really decides how you're going to go through life, or how willing you're going to be to put yourself in other situations that may contribute or that may elicit emotions that are similar to that, right? So I learned from being and feeling different, it's important for me to fit in, right? I need to fit in at all costs. And so I constantly was searching for external validation. How can other people like me? And then there was, also there was a lot of, maybe not from my classmates, but from older people, like this racism, this bigotry, and it's weird when you're little and you have adults saying, calling you the N-word or calling you a monkey or whatever, something like that. It's just an odd thing because like you're little, like you trust adults, and so if they say something, then obviously it must be true. Right. So it was really for me, it was like, oh, I felt like I really had to master this art of fitting in, or at least trying to be as good as. And I got really, really good at it. You develop a sense of humor, because if you have a sense of humor, you have levity. Humor is control. Humor allows you to kind of shape and mold situations the way that you want to shape and mold them. You can control someone else's response if you're trying to direct it with humor. So, got to get good at that. Sports was really important because if you're a good athlete, you always get a pass, right? So those things became very, very important to me. And I also had a little bout of ADHD. So, which when you're growing up in the 70s and the 80s, you're not actually getting taken out of class for that. There's no IEP for that. You're just
It's not known, right?
yeah, you're just spastic, right? So that was pretty much about it. So every time I got a C or I got a D or whatever, there was the boom, right? That belief. Hey, remember, you're not good enough. Here's more evidence of it. Here's more evidence of it. So I just had a mountain of evidence, that I just accrued during the course of preteens to teenage years, in my 20s, in my 30s. And that is like the nucleus and the core of some faulty belief and some faulty thinking that needed to be rewired.
Got you. And would you say there's, obviously you can sort of look back and piece together this puzzle now. Would you say there was one singular pivotal moment or an event or something in your life that happened to give you that clarity on the past, or oh, this is why I am who I am now, and this, or was it some more of like you've perhaps discovered something that's going to help you think differently, and that's felt life changing? How did it go for you?
Yeah, it was, there's a lot of moments. I think that you kind of reflect, like, what am I doing here? How did I get here again? Right. So it's like these, if we don't learn from these lessons from the past, we have to take the class over. But when we take the class over, there's more consequences. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, as so as that continued to happen, I think the pivotal moment was, I remember um, being in a men's group, right? So I was sitting in this men's group after having so many difficulties just with my own marriage. And this was, God, right before the pandemic. And there was a guy, right, in this midst of, there's like 6 or 7 of us in this group. And, two facilitators. Now, up to this point, I had probably facilitated, I don't know, 10 years worth of groups, right? So, I mean, I had been doing it for a very, very long time. But it was the first time that I was actually involved in a group as a member instead of
Mm.
facilitating the group. So it was very, in a way, it was liberating, and in a way, it was felt like very nerve wracking because I couldn't dictate what was going to happen. I couldn't kind of control the flow, right? And that was
Mm.
a very important thing for me, period, was control. Because once you lose control, then all of a sudden you're like, I can be found out. I'm vulnerable. I'm at risk. Like all of these different thoughts, right? They said this,
Mm.
like, right? So I'm sitting in this group, and this guy, and one of the things I've always said about groups, what I love, when you're involved in a group, if you're there long enough, someone will tell your story, right? Somebody's going to tell your story. Or if they don't tell your exact story, they're going to tell a pretty close version of it. And so
Yeah.
you really get the chance to grow from the experience. So a guy was sharing, and he's like, yeah, it's like, I felt like I have this hole in my chest, right? And I would fill it with substances, pornography, and sex, like just whatever, gambling, all these other things. He's like, and it was almost like water in a pothole. Because if you're driving on a road and you see water, and this road, and there's a pothole there, but when it rains, it fills up with water. So you
Yeah.
can't really tell that it's empty, right?
Mm.
So it looks full, but it's actually not. Eventually, the water drains back down, the hole is there, right? And as he explained it, I was just like, I sat there frozen. And I was like, oh my God, like, holy shit, right? It's like this guy, he nailed it. Here was this existence that I've had from, at this point, what it felt like my entire life, right?
Yeah.
And he verbalized it perfectly. And because I've had a substance abuse history, like, we haven't even touched on that, but like 15 years of active substance abuse, 16 years of sobriety at this point. But it was all of those things, the external validation, like just constantly seeking something, seeking, someone or something to fill this hole, right? And then as he described it, I remember like sharing with him, saying thank you. I don't know this person's name, right? I remember sharing with him, saying thank you, and getting in the car and bawling for like 40 minutes. Like it was like midlife crisis type stuff, right?
Mm.
And I just could not believe that this dude explained my life so effortlessly, And a couple of things happened. Like I felt it was, I don't know, it was like a 40-year cry, you know what I'm saying? Like I felt like, oh my God, that's it. Right. That is it. I have this hole in my chest, and I've been trying to fill this hole externally with things and people and validation. That's the problem. But then the other part was holy shit, I'm not the only person that has this, right? And then later on, I looked at it and I thought, holy shit, I can teach people how to not do this. Well, first become aware of it. And then also, secondly, then how to fill this hole on our own, right? I didn't know how to do that. I didn't understand that because authenticity wasn't something that I valued. Authenticity meant I'm different and not good enough. Authenticity didn't mean that I'm me and that's okay. I just never made that connection. So that was the moment. That was the moment where there was this self-awareness and reflecting back onto how or what was wrong with my thinking and my process.
That's so interesting that you speak about having facilitated groups and things for this time, almost as kind of like I speak about on here, actually, like as sort of the expert, and put in that like more of a leadership dynamic, showing up there, but actually it wasn't until you were the participant, or just in that moment, exactly what you needed, and how you connected in that moment with the story of somebody else, at that time, after you must have heard so many other people's stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I think that's what was made it so interesting is that when you're on, what I like to call it, that side of the couch, right? When you're on the facilitating side of the couch, your job is really to just listen. You just listen, you mirror, right? Like if I'm sitting down with my clients or whatever, or sitting down when I was facilitating groups, I would just listen, I would mirror, and I would listen for certain things that people would say. And I would just almost say click, and that would remind me I need to go there because in that space there's more. And it's like, let me kind of ask the right question so they can fall into a response and kind of understand, like, oh, I never really looked at it that way, right? Because you never want to give people the right answer, because if you give it to them, then they just received it. But if
Yeah.
they stumble upon it, then it's theirs and then they own it, right? And then they can live it. So it's different. So when you're sitting on that side of the couch, the facilitating side of the couch, you're just kind of like, all right, you listen for things, like, okay,
Yeah,
ooh, I
yeah.
hear, okay, I got you, right? But when you're on this side of the couch, right, when you're actually a member of the group, you're legitimately sitting in the wound. You're sitting in that pain, you're sitting in the feeling, you're sitting in the emotion, you're sitting in the experience, right? And you're really allowing all of that stuff to just wash over you. And you can have, and that's part of the toughest thing. It's the reason why we're on our phones so much. It's the reason why we drink. It's the reason why, I know one of the things you were talking about was eating. I was bulimic at one time, my
Yeah.
first year of college, right? Because things weren't going right. And the way that I looked at food was something, it was like a tool, right? It was not a healthy relationship that I had with myself, but I was also had an unhealthy relationship with food. And so it was, when you're sitting in that experience, it's very, very difficult to do that, but it's also eye-opening, because you're not directing anything when you're facilitating. You're just allowing things to kind of, you know, um, happen to you. I think that was
Oh.
a very big difference for me.
So what did that mean then from that moment? Because you said at that time, you perhaps in the midst of some marriage difficulties,
Mm-hmm.
I think you said, and like that realization moment, obviously it doesn't just straight away give you all the answers. It kind of just throws you deeper into it, perhaps at first. But like, what did that look like in terms of the next steps from there for you?
Yeah, I remember going to I was actually at the time seeing a therapist, right?
Mm.
And so I go into him. I'm like, hey man, like, Bob, yo, this is what happened the other day. He's like, He's older dude, white guy, right? Like mid-60s, established practice, had the suit on, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it was it was really funny, like working with, because my whole thing is like whatever character you're in, I'm breaking that shit, right? Because I'm not down with that. I can't, no way. Like, we're
Right.
gonna do this, right? I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to your representative, okay?
Yes.
My representative has been my representative has been showing up every single day, so I know this game. So it would be like we would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? And finally, I kind of got to him. I'm like, yo, Bob, like, this is what happened, man. And he's just like, all right, what's up? So I explained it to him, and of course, I got all weepy. And he's just like, okay, it's like, you already know where this came from? And I'm like, yeah, I explained it to him. I just had no idea that. First, I didn't know that it could be any other way. But then it was also like I didn't understand. Like, I knew that there were all of these dots, and it was just a matter of like I didn't know how those dots connected to these single events, right?
Yeah.
And so I had done CBT. I'm a big CBT guy, cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's evidence based. It's really solid. Thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So that I've been doing that, co-facilitating those things for over a decade, right? So it was from that space. It wasn't hard to recognize, like, all right, this is where the problem was in my thinking. These are the things that I need to do. And I think our conversations, because my wife and I were like, we were at that space, it really was about sitting down and having some very, very difficult conversations, some
Mm.
really tough conversations. And it's almost when you're in a situation like myself that you block with humor, I blocked with substances, right? I would consistently avoid our relationship was kind of like this, like that was the rug because we swept so much shit under it. Boom,
Mm-hmm.
boom, more stuff, boom, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like, so once we kind of got rid of the rug, and then I realized like how much of my stuff that I wasn't able to sit with. And I couldn't run from it. I couldn't run from it. So the healing part of it was being willing to sit down and have very tough conversations and not run from them. And that is the only thing that I ever wanted to do. It was like avoidance was the most important aspect of my life because I wasn't able to sit in those emotions. And like, because emotions are like email, it's kind of like if you can think about your email now,
Mm-hmm.
if you only opened, say, a third of them, right? You'd be in some shit. Pardon my French. I curse a lot. You'd really
Fine.
have some. Right? You'd be in some shit, right? Because there would be so much information that you don't have.
Yeah.
It's eventually going to affect the way that you go about your life, right? Because you
Mm.
don't have all this information. And so that's what I was doing by avoiding situations, right? I would avoid these situations that would create certain emotions. I was avoiding those emotions because they would lead me down the line that would affect some of my core beliefs of not being good enough, or that would put me in a space in which I would feel inadequate. And nobody wants to feel inadequate, right? So you basically do anything you possibly can to avoid the emotion of inadequacy, meaning you avoid any situation you possibly can that's going to make you feel inadequate. Conversations, like all of those things, those are the most important things, especially with the people that
Yeah.
you care about the most, right? So that was the start. It was pulling the band-aid off, sitting down, having some of the toughest conversations of my life, accepting accountability, and
Mm.
it's like actually seeing like, all right, I can be in this space and not die. Like I feel like I'm going to. Like it's okay for me to feel these things. And
Mm.
that was the foundation of it. That was the start of true healing for me.
Yeah. I really appreciate the way that you're relaying this story, and it does resonate a lot with with parts of my journey that I've shared on here previously, around even current things happening for me, like using food sometimes, and actually thinking, like, just having these realizations that there is some underlying emotion here that I need to get to the bottom of, and there's like some core beliefs maybe like below that, and like taking that, it's like it's a really strange journey to kind of open up, because it's kind of like you've opened a can of worms, you can't unsee what you've seen, so you now kind of choose to sit in that discomfort and feel the feelings, and sometimes wish you never had the insight in the first place, right?
Yeah, I know it helps to have new skills as well, right? Like I would never have been able to do that without having someone to talk to that was outside of my own circle, right? Because it's like, in certain ways, your best friend, your cousin, as soon as something happens, the person that you call that's going to make you feel better, they got your back. They love you. They may not necessarily tell you the truth, right? They may tell you a version of it that's palatable, which is sometimes is great, but sometimes that's not helping, right? Sometimes and if they don't know how to help, it may be hard for them to say, I'm not sure exactly what I can do for you, because here you are coming to, because I know when people have come to me in the past and I'm like, this may be more than I can handle. I haven't said this may be more than I can handle. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like you don't want to let them down. You want to give them something, right? You want them to feel better. This is your friend. This is your people. This is like your first grade classmate. Like, you're like, oh, I love you, oh, right? So you want to be able to do that. If I didn't have Bob, I wouldn't have been able to process some of the stuff, because, Bob is there for one reason, for my own personal growth. That's it. He's not my friend. He's not my boy. I don't invite Bob trick-or-treating, right? Like, he doesn't come over to watch football. Like, he was strictly there for one purpose. So he was a resource that allowed me to really understand more about what was going on, right? Because without that, then you just go back to the old things that you used to do. But like, if we knew, I say this a lot, right? If we knew the solution to our own problems, it wouldn't be problems.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the truth is,
Agree.
if our friends, right, if our friends knew the solution to our problems, they wouldn't be problems, right? But all of us still have problems. So it's like, man, I had to like make sure that I had different skills in place, people that I could talk to that were outside of my circle, the men's group, and Bob, like my therapist. Like, those two huge. They were huge for me to be able to like see something that's on the outside of me, and then understand that there's this pathway that I can take that they've already know, and they can walk me through it. That was big. And then you have your other skills, like you try to eat healthy, meditate, go for walks, you get exercise, like, you do all of those things to keep yourself healthy, but you also kind of need a Sherpa, right? You need somebody that's going to help you climb Mount Everest, because if you try to do it yourself, you may run into some problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you feel comfortable to share, how did things go then within your marriage, or did you decide it was better to part, or like again, like, if you feel like you could share that with us. There we go. There we go.
By the grace of God, my wife is amazing and strong and powerful and patient, and has terrible taste in men, right? So those it was a combination of all of that really helped. Now, it was just consistently, being able to sit down, and we did couples therapy for a long time too, and that was fucking brutal. Like, it was just knowing that was hard enough, and then our conversations afterwards were really hard. But I found that it was the most rewarding thing, was being able to sit down and talk about what was going on and where we were at. And then we had our follow-up conversations on our couch, and it was just all it was really, really, it was life-saving for me. It really was. It just understanding, who I was and how our limiting beliefs hurt other people. Right.
Yeah.
And they definitely hurt the people that we're closest to. Because if we don't heal our wounds from the past, they bleed over our people in the future. Right. And that's what was happening. Right. This constant search for validation, ended up creating difficulties at home. And I was like, oh my God. And so it was really, really big. And if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have got help. I would have been, you sit on enough couches in the facilitator role, you think you've heard everything. And worse than that, you think you know everything. Right. And I knew so much except for how to heal myself. Right.
Mm.
I didn't know that. I had absolutely no idea how to do it. I knew that there were some pieces of me that were jacked up, but I had no idea like that there was any other way. And so that was really big. So yeah, we've gone on strong and keep celebrating anniversaries and enjoying our time on the couch and still have conversations, like difficult conversations, and
Yeah.
everything changes. There's a difficult or a different appreciation. There's thank yous for coffee. There's thank yous for bringing the clothes downstairs. Right? It's just like there's these little things that you constantly miss. I now pay attention to, and so it was really valuable to have that experience. I mean, it really was. It's definitely been life changing.
I think I just can't stop thinking about how valuable it is. Not only, I mean, for me personally, and all people listening into this, to embrace that vulnerability, to seek the spaces outside of yourself and your bubble that you might be in at the moment, to have these conversations, to share stories with people in the knowledge that actually something might resonate. You might learn something from this space, but especially, I think as well, you probably more often than not work with men as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very refreshing to hear the stories of men, and the men doing the work as well as women doing the work. And it's
Yeah.
it's nice to meet and to see men in this space, for sure.
There has been a challenge with the guys and definitely myself as well. Like I have my childhood friends, and there's always a conduit, right? It's almost like if you can imagine two people sitting at a table. In
Mm.
between them is the table, right? So you have the table, you have the two people. So there's always a table in the middle. And that becomes the nature of the guy-guy relationship, right? We'll get together and we'll communicate, but there's always a table. Now that table could be anything. It could be a round of golf. It could be football. It could be like, ping pong. There's some type of that could be axe throwing, which is a thing,
Yeah.
right? So there's always some type of activity that's in between, the guy and the conversation, right? There's got to be a table there where, like, my wife will get together and she'll go out with her friends and they'll sit in the car in a parking lot and talk for 3 hours, right? And that, like, yeah, we just sat down. Like, how do you do that without, like, he doesn't do anything? You throw darts and right?
What's the excuse? What's the reason to get there? Like,
Exactly.
just to talk.
Just to talk. Like, how do you wait? What? Right? Isn't the wiffle? You're playing wiffle, right? And so doing the work for the guys is really, it's a challenge, right? It's the perspective of, tough guys don't cry, and real men fill in
Yeah.
the blank, and and the corrosive, toxic teachings of Andrew Tate. Right? There is this belief of how we're supposed to function and how we're supposed to take these emotions, these feelings,
Yeah.
and then find a small drawer somewhere in it, shove them in the drawer, and then close it and never open.
Yeah.
That's like never opening your email. Right? You now, we go through life where you're only opening certain emails, and you go through your life emotionally illiterate, right? And we
Mm.
really lack emotional literacy. That's part of the problem. And that was definitely one of my struggles. Was I consistently, because I was not opening those emails, because I was fearful. The only thing I was concerned about was filling this hole, was not feeling empty, because I wasn't able to figure out why I needed someone else to provide me with value.
Mm.
Why am I subcontracting out that work? How come I can't do that myself? Well, it's because I wasn't willing to visit the pieces and the emotions that made me feel inadequate, because that's where the answers are, right? The
Mm.
answers are always in the emotions that you don't want to feel. If you're in pain, it's almost something where you want to say thank you, right? Because that is the GPS that's saying, this is where you need to focus on. This is where you need to go. If you're looking for your answer, it's wrapped up in that pain. But you have to look, right? And if you
Yeah.
can't find it by yourself, and if you're unwilling to look by yourself, then you need to find somebody that can. Don't try to
Mm.
do it by yourself. Get help and ask for help. And that is something that dudes, the last thing in the world that we want to do is ask for help. We don't want to do it, right? So
Yeah.
that becomes a challenge.
I can relate to that as a woman as well. Even, on the self-development journey, still, like myself, for example, sort of went headfirst into self-development. And I would say, like, I see that as like the masculine world of self-development. Like, let's get in the 1% club, let's do all these healthy
Mm-hmm.
habits. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the healthy habits fill the emotional gaps as well, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
still getting that validation just from healthy things sometimes, because can become a little bit of a mask as well. But um yeah, the emotional work is, it's so much part of where that something I'm diving deep into at the moment. So I can really see and respect it in others who are still going through that journey. What do you make of, like, I feel like it's an ongoing journey that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we seem to see on Instagram, coaches or whatever, that it's like, oh, this is when I healed, or this is when I fixed myself, essentially. And it's as if then from that point onwards, nothing ever came up, nothing
Mm-hmm.
ever triggered you, and life was amazing. And then I earned all of the money and got all of the things. Like, how do you see that sort of situation?
Yeah. I don't want to, I'm gonna kind of, I hear you and I want to respond to that directly. But when you had mentioned something about healthy habits, it reminded me of the gym, right? The gym culture, the
Mm.
gym life. And I have so many people that I've run into and have worked with. I mean, jacked. They
Yeah.
just swole up. They got like 24 packs. They got like abs in their neck. They start here. They start like, you look at their chin and it's just the chin is chiseled, and it goes like, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's that mirror. That mirror is the
Mm.
drug. That mirror is the validation. The second that they feel the emotion, they go to the gym, right? They're running to the gym because they're not processing the emotion. They're not processing those feelings. And so when that email comes in, they go right to the gym. So the
Yeah.
work that still needs to be done. And what happens? You look great, but how do you feel? How do you see yourself? The world sees you as phenomenal, and oh my God, super hot, and you're getting all the validation in the world, and chicks and dudes and whoever is just like turning themselves like, oh God, look at this guy, blah 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 blah. But then they feel empty. They feel awful unless they have a mirror or someone else to validate them, right? So that's the whole. That's the whole. So you're absolutely right. You can, on the outside, you can say, hey, this is a very healthy thing. You're working out. But is it though? Right? Because that
Mm.
may not be the work that you need to do. You may need to try to lift something else, right? And not necessarily just weight. Right. So
Yeah, sometimes we're still plugging the gap, right?
that's right. That's right. But so yeah, I see it a lot when like thinking about like things are completely done. It is the challenge that I find now is like in work, as can't stand doing video. I really don't. I mean, I can't stand it.
I mean, you're so great at it
No, I can't.
though. Here we are.
Right? Cannot stand it. Well, talking to somebody is different. Talking to the little dot, like
Yeah.
talking that completely different story. Because you
Okay.
like when you're dealing with people, you have emotional feedback. Like this is I love
Mm.
this. I love this. But when I'm just sitting there, hey, how you doing? It's Mac Loftin. Welcome to Video Life Coaching. Yeah. Are you
So
excited?
animated.
Right? Jazz hands and shit. Like I hate that. Right? I hate it. But you can't, the tough part about business, you can't go in there and be like, listen, I will do everything. I am like really good at this. I'll do everything I possibly can and make sure I can help you. I can teach you how to do this. I know what you're feeling. I understand your experience. I got you. Give me a call, holla at me. Let's create an appointment. Let's go. That ain't working, right? So, so the tough part is now allowing yourself to be terrible at something. And
Mm.
as great as we are at working with people, I can speak for myself. I am not very good at marketing, right? And so when you're not good at something, you tend not to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But right? But if you love your people, and this is like my mindset and what I have to work on, I'm like, Mike, listen, there is no better, and I'm sure you understand this. There is no better feeling in the world than like the moments after you hang up a call or after you finish with a client and
Yeah.
like like it was there and your vibe and they got it and they had that aha moment and they're like and they're leaving and they're feeling good and you can see their development and so and you're just like man, that feeling, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a drug in itself because
Yeah,
you're like
sure.
connected to your purpose. You know what I mean? Like you're completely dialed in. That feels great. Right. But now sitting down and creating a marketing thing and so and so and so and so, that doesn't feel great. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to be received. You have absolutely, and it's the unknown is the problem. That's something that I know I have to continue working on. In the way that I kind of describe it, like my son was scared of the dark, right? And so he's in his room, and I have my moments as a dad. Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I'm not. So he's in his room, and he's like, whatever. I'm sitting on this bed. I'm like, hey, man, turn the light on. So he's like, well, you turn the light on, like, this little nightlight thing. I'm like, look at him and go, are you still afraid of the dark? He's like, doesn't say anything. I'm sorry. So I sat on his bed, and I said, I'm like, all right, what do you see? Lights on. He's like, I see my Legos, I see my light, stuffed animals, blah, blah, blah. He starts naming stuff in his room. Sorry. I get up, I go, turn the light off. Now it's in the dark. I go back, I sit on his bed. I said, what's in your room? He's like, oh, my Legos, and so, and so, and so, and so. I said, that's the thing, right? So you already understand that the same thing is in your room. Like, that.
Yeah.
That's truth. But because you can't see it, what we do is you take all of these things, all of the worst things that you can possibly imagine, because it's empty. So you have to fill that room. It's dark. So you have to fill it with something. And what we fill it with is fear and doubt and difficult situations and whatever movie that you happen to watch. And like, whatever monster, blah, 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 because you're
Yeah,
young.
yeah.
Right. And so I was like explaining that. And I remember walking out of the room being like, oh, yeah, nailed that one. Right. But here we go in my own life. Right? marketing is that dark room,
Mm.
right? It's the dark room. Marketing is putting something out there, not knowing how it's going to be received, and having the fear that's going to be received as, this guy's stupid. Who is he? What an idiot. Are you kidding me? Like, this is what you're doing? Like, this is clearly not good enough. And there it is, inadequacy, not good enough, less than, worthless, defective, all of those things. And so it ties direct, you can see the dots pointing right back to those same negative core beliefs from those same situations from like 40 years ago, longer
Sure.
than that. Right. So that, for me, that's consistent. And I think that happens for a lot of coaches too, because we're
Yeah.
not good at it. It becomes tough to just keep repeatedly doing something and saying, like, reminding us or having something in our heads that say, this is the reason why I'm doing it, knowing truly who you are or what you can do in comparison to that light being off and feeling like, oh, here it goes again. Right. Let me drag all these past wounds into this current situation. So I think that's, for me, that's the area where I have to continue doing the work, because if I was truly beyond that, it wouldn't bother me, but it does.
Mm.
So I'm not.
Got
Right?
you.
That's
Got
all
you.
right.
And thank you so much for sharing that, by the way, because I like literally you just answered my like one of the last questions that I share on this is, could you share something really present and potentially vulnerable that you're working on right now to show that this whole point of coaches in real life is like it's an ongoing journey. We're not fixed. We aren't experts. We have great skills in coaching probably, and the tools that we can use, but we're absolutely human, which means that there are vulnerabilities, there are challenges to showing up as our um authentic selves at times. There are journeys that wounds that come up that we're still healing on, or something that comes back that we thought we'd healed, or like, and you've you've offered that up from what you've said, which I thank you for, because I think there's nothing more connecting than honest stories like that, and that's your own version of what's just gonna probably trigger something for somebody else in like you received the story in your circle, and we have those moments of realization. Definitely with you on not having solved, healed, worked out the perfect marketing thing right now, and but continuing on that journey of, I know it feels right to keep trying to show up as authentically as I can, as vulnerably as I dare to in this moment, and as much as me, and sharing my stories and our stories as I can, so that people can connect to that. Whether it's aha moments that we can see, or ones that we just have to trust that we know are there, because we know how stories can connect from our own experiences, then we keep reminding ourselves of that. And that's something that I really would love to foster more in the coaches circle as well, like that reminder that actually being human is our most powerful tool, and our sharing our stories, and separation from that, like, this is what you need to do to be the expert, and share in this way, and put all the hashtags on it, and share it at this time of day, and do the Instagram thing, or this
Mm-hmm.
rules.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate you sharing that, and continuing on that journey.
Definitely. No, I thank you for acknowledging that, and I think your first video was very much opening up and sharing about your concerns and your relationship with food, and it really set the tone and set that precedent for, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm willing, what I'm ready to share in this moment. And that's part of the reason why healing is so important, right? The more that we heal from, the more that we can share.
Yeah.
And the more we heal, for us as coaches, the more we heal, the more we can teach, right? Because
Mm,
every single lesson becomes a chapter in your book or a chapter for your course, and then now you can teach from that place. But we can't teach what we have not healed from, because the stuff we haven't healed from, we ain't talking about, right?
mm,
So it's so important for us to be doing the work on ourselves so that we can move to the next space and then teach from that place. Like that's essential. I love Gabby Bernstein. I think she's fantastic, right?
yeah.
Her book Happy Days was, I mean, she just like just open it up, just just here's my heart, blah blah. Right?
Yeah.
It was insane. And from that, I had just had this incredible respect for her and what she does. I mean, it really, really was very, very powerful, very, very powerful. And
Mm.
you know,
I find similar things as well, that that's always the way that I have connected with people. When I think like, do I more connect with, and sometimes we do, sometimes we connect with like more the perhaps ego driven stuff, like, oh, do you want this in your life, or shiny object syndrome, do you want more money, do you want more of this as a coach,
mhm,
do you want this? But um yeah, actually a lot of the times I've been drawn to investing in someone or having somebody help me in some way, whether it be via a book, via a coach, via a podcast, is because they showed me something of themselves, rather than saying, I know what you can do because I'm the expert, but more like, this is what I went through, or what I'm still going through, openly and honestly. So yeah, I look forward to learning even more about you, and hearing some of your stories. But just thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly, in the spirit of coaches in real life today.
oh,
Thank you so much.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best. I'll be following you and supporting you and watching all your stuff. So I really wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much, Michael. Take
All
care,
right,
and
Abby.
I'll chat with you soon.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.